Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm your host, Steve Carroll. Apologies, we've been quiet for a couple of weeks, but we are back now with an emergency podcast because obviously we have heard the news that the managerial hot seat at Swansea City is vacant. Luke Williams has been given his marching orders, and to discuss this event plus whatever else has gone on over the last few weeks, which has been quite a lot. I'm pleased to say Andy Goggin is joining me. Evening, Andy.
Hi, Steve. How's it going?
Great question. I'm sure you know the answer to that. God, this club, eh? Not a huge shock, I would probably say, that Luke Williams has lost his job. I mean, was that your reaction? One of just inevitability when you found out the news earlier on this evening?
Yeah, I think inevitability seems about right. I was a little bit surprised at the timing. His mate coming in from Notts County as director of football just after the transfer window. The fans forum tomorrow, well, now postponed. I know. I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it was going to happen today to avoid the forum," but I genuinely thought they wouldn't do that. I thought, they'd probably write out a little bit, but. Yeah, I mean, it's been getting steadily worse, hasn't it? And I think the last week or so, I think he's tried to make changes, and everything he's done has made things worse. And so it did feel inevitable for sure. And I think you only have to look at the reaction on social media to see. I think the majority of Swans fans are supportive of the decision for him to go for sure. But yeah. I'm a bit surprised, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I can see why the decision's made, but I do worry whether it's the right one at the right time. But there we go.
I mean, it's a difficult one, really, isn't it? I mean, I do sympathise with Luke Williams in terms of, as usual, like most of our managers in recent years, it feels like they've been let down in the transfer market. I mean, this is not a good squad. The depth isn't there really either, but the problem I've struggled with is, particularly since the turn of the year, I think we played 10 games, one including one in the cup. It's 8 defeats. I haven't got the goals record in front of me, but I think we've only scored 4 in that time. We've conceded well over 20. That's what worries me. We haven't really faced many of the sides at the top either. Far too many pastings. I mean, Portsmouth stuck 4 in us. Norwich stuck 5, Cardiff stuck 3, an awful Cardiff, I'd like to add as well. I mean, Stoke at the weekend, they stuck 3 in us. It's, results like that, it just couldn't go on, could it? I mean, I couldn't even feel the joy when Cardiff lost 7-0 the other day, because my first thought was, we have to go to Leeds, and I dread to think what they might do to us. So you just can't be losing those type of opposition in the way that we have, can you?
No, you can't, and it's why I don't have a lot of sympathy for the decision being made now. I mean, I think Williams hasn't helped himself. As you say, regardless of the quality of the squad, and in my eyes, and I've said it all season, it's a bottom 6 squad. It's we have. I mean, if Liam Cullen is far and away your best attacker, then your attacking players aren't good enough. It's that simple. And our defence, which was pretty good in the start of the season, which is why we did relatively well in the first half of the season, has just absolutely gone to pieces now. And even more so in the last week when we've gone to 3 at the back, which just simply hasn't worked. So I don't have sympathy for. I think Williams has been dealt the bad hands, but he's played it especially badly in the last couple of months, which is ironic, because I think in the first half of the season, I think, regardless of performances, which were always a bit dull, I think, it wasn't exactly the free-flowing football we wanted. But I think he was getting some decent results out of them. But since I think you said before the Sunderland game, I think from then really, I think with Hull away, I mean, people talk about the West Brom interest and all that, and that's what's turned things. It was going before then. And those games, Sunderland, Hull, I mean, even weeks before then, when we weren't scoring for a while, the signs were always there that this could happen. And if our defence gave out, and it has, and we're left with we can't score goals, and we can't stop conceding them. It's a toxic mix. So yeah, I mean, a lot of that's on the manager. absolutely. So, and it's a results business at the end of the day. And if you can't get the results, you can't get the team out of them. And if you can't arrest the slide, then it did feel, if not now, when, or or a matter of time, it'd be a few weeks on. But I think the timing's questionable and the execution's questionable, because it looks like Alan Sheehan's coming in to replace him at least temporarily, and I mean, it's difficult to see anyone else coming in quickly based on past experience. So is that, if you look at it that way, are you happy with Alan Sheehan taking over managerial duties from Luke Williams? Oh, I'm not sure I am, but it could get worse from here. That's my concern. But I get why a change has been made, because something's got to give, isn't it? Because we are on free fall at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it feels a bit strange, because like earlier in the season there was a lot of goodwill really towards Williams. I know we did have that run of not scoring through October, for example, but we were keeping a lot of clean sheets, and it wasn't looking particularly bad at all. And obviously we had a couple of good wins at Christmas, where there was a little bit of talk of, could we end up pushing for the playoffs if January went well, and obviously it went terrible, and the results went terrible, meaning that was impossible anyway. But I mean, I look back now and I do wonder if a key turning point may have been the Sunderland game, where he essentially criticised the players at full time after we were 2-0 up and lost 3-2. I mean, I felt that was a bit harsh. I mean, it was disappointing, obviously, but I don't think the players should have been criticised publicly. We were playing against a good side, and you should really only criticise publicly in very rare occasions. And I felt that was nowhere near the right time to do that. And since then, there's been a lot of poor performances. I mean, we spoke off before we started recording, didn't we, about the Hull game being really bad, for example, and and then obviously we've seen the games in January, and I do wonder if maybe that was where it started. Do you think that may have played a bit of a part in things going wrong?
I mean, yeah, I think you're probably right there. I think, I think there's plenty of examples in the past where managers publicly criticising the players. I mean, things go badly from there. I remember who was that Perma Town chap who was managing Hull in the Premier League, Phil Brown. They had a great start of the season, and but they had a bad game. He made them stay outside at half time, and they went an absolute free fall after that, from about November, December onwards. And he basically got sacked a couple months later.
You're thinking of the ball again on the pitch at half time at Man City, aren't you?
That's the one, yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah. So I calling out the players like that, it can go badly. So I definitely think that's a factor. I think a lot of his stuff in the media has just been dumb, really, rather than malicious or anything like that. I think he was naive in what he said there. I think he was naive with the way he acted on West Brom. I don't think he was actually courting the job. I think he was just trying to be flippant, and it didn't go very well. He's made a rod for his own back ultimately with it all, and that's why there probably isn't much sympathy for him now at the moment. But I think, and especially given we were overperforming with our results before then, it probably doesn't take much, does it, to tip it? Because it's a crap squad, and that's doing well. But if their confidence gets dented a little bit, then that may be it. I mean, I think we did tweak our tactics as well a bit. I think we did push on our fullbacks a bit more, which probably made us a bit. It basically trying to score more goals. We made ourselves more defensively unstable, and I don't think we've recovered from that really. And we certainly haven't scored more goals. So I think is it one thing? I don't know. But I certainly think he's not helping themselves with those sort of comments. I'm sure the players didn't appreciate it. Let's put it that way. And I'm sure it's had an effect. But I think probably his tactical changes have had an effect as well. Trying to push the fullbacks up a bit more. But then the lack of quality there has also been a factor as well, I think. But which is why I have some sympathy with him, but not a lot, if I'm being honest. I think he's got to look at his own actions here and his own tactics and his decision making, and it's been found wanting the last couple of months, and it does look like he's been a bit of a rabbit in headlights as well, especially last week or two. But I think I do remember him. He's walking down the tunnel, after one of the home games at a defeat. So it did feel inevitable. It did feel like his decision making was a big factor in this.
Yeah, I mean it does. If we talked about this, I think at the end of December, it would have been quite staggering, really, how it's fallen off the cliff, wouldn't it? Nobody really saw this coming, did they? But as you say, it has felt inevitable, really, with recently. And I actually wonder myself if he'd had a gutsful, because I look at the comments he made about, and he was essentially criticising the recruitment team, wasn't he, after the transfer window shut. And then I look at the substitutions on the weekend for me. I think Fulton and Darlin coming on for Norton and Cooper when you're chasing the game. I was just thinking, like, you can't really be serious. So I do wonder if himself, if he just had enough and thought, I can't really work with this anymore because I'm fed up of being shafted in the transfer market, and he himself isn't too bothered to be put out of his misery.
Well, there wasn't a lot on the bench, was there? I think we got.
Well, you could look at it though, and you say Vipotnik was on there and Pert Harris. I mean, if you're chasing the game, you're going to bring them on surely before you bring on Darlin and Fulton.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But I just don't rate either of those, I suppose.
Oh, look, I don't particularly either, but at least they are, they're attacking players, aren't they? They're more likely to do something, whereas the other two, you're just thinking, well, how's that going to change it?
No, I mean, bringing on Jay Fulton when you're chasing the game is doesn't make any sense at the best of times, and swapping centre halves doesn't as well. I suppose you could argue Darling could have been more of an attacking threat from set pieces. Maybe that was part of the thinking there, which is fair enough. But no, not bringing on another forward or two, changing the formation, for example, it would have made a lot of sense. And he didn't do that. I mean, he's getting a payoff. It's one of the great things about being a football manager, isn't it? If you crap at a job, you get paid off for a couple of years. It's not bad, really. But it did look like he'd had enough. And there's rumours coming out of the camp that he's not been himself lately. He's been feeling like a dead man walking. So maybe that's true. But I think he's like you say, comes back to being inevitable, doesn't it? It just feels like I think he'd lost his way here. He may have lost his desire to be here. And I mean, those substitutions against Stoke were looked a bit daft at the time, let alone in hindsight. So I think you're right, mate. Yeah,
it did feel like that to me, and if that is the case, then he's been put out of his misery, really, hasn't he? I mean, you touched on Sheehan earlier. I mean, his record on paper wasn't too bad when he took it last time. I mean, I thought in general we were pretty crap under him, and the fixture list was quite generous, should we say. I remember Rotherham were one of the teams that we faced, and they were obviously struggling at the time. I think we had a draw at Stoke. I think the only decent team we played was Southampton, and obviously they humiliated us 5-0. So, look, Sheehan is not for me, I don't think. I think he's a Watson appointment. We shouldn't still be here, in my opinion. I hope that the next manager gets rid of him. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But it's Sheehan doesn't strike me. He's not a Swansea person. I don't think that's what we need really at this moment in time. And you've said it yourself, haven't you? You're on the same page.
Oh, very much so. And it's really interesting, the announcement today, isn't it? That Luke Williams is gone, Ryan Harley's gone, George Lawty's gone. Who's still there? Sheehan, Margetson. So there does seem to be a bit of a, as we said beforehand, and you said, there looks to be, who are the club's men, who are Williams's men. Williams's guys have gone, but the club's men, they're still there, and those are the ones that are in charge. Which, this does kind of point to, what did Williams really have a team he wanted there? Did that hold him back? Were there conflicting voices there? That's not a good setup, where you've got different people with different backings and not working together. That's never going to work. So Sheehan's got his chance now, hasn't he? And as you say, I mean, I think it was a very, uninspiring bag when he had the chance last time. We need him to pull a rabbit out of the hat here, because we have 4 games coming up before we play Leeds and Burnley, which are, in normal circumstances, games we could hope to get something from. But the way we're playing at the moment, it's very difficult to see us getting anything from them. But we need a reaction, because the squad's not good enough. But can somebody fire a rocket up them and just get a result or two? Because we still in a fortunate position there. We got another 7-8 point gap from the bottom 3 that they aren't winning games. So a win or two now in the next 4 games probably pushes us pretty much to safety. So if this decision gets those 2 wins, just that short-term reaction, I mean, it'll look like the right decision. My concern is it won't, or it might not, and then we may have an even bigger problem. But for all our sakes, we hope we get him, because relegation will be an absolute disaster for us.
Yeah, it would. I mean, looking at the bookies odds, I mean, I think they're crazy really at the moment in terms of who's in the run, and they've got Russell Martin as favourite, which I'd be amazed at, should we say? I think after the way that he left, there seemed to be some animosity there. I really don't see that happening. So he's 5-1. Then you've got Ryan Lowe, Neil Harris, Gary O'Neill, Alan Sheehan, Ryan Giggs, Cameron Toshak, Steve Cooper are the top 8 in the running. I mean, I don't see any of them other than Sheehan being realistic to you.
I think you can rule out half of them straight away. And I think they just basically, who's a former manager, who's been linked in the past, they go check their names down.
Yeah, and who's out of work, isn't it?
Well, exactly. I mean, the idea is getting Gary O'Neill, who's still on a Premier League manager's wage, getting him in a couple months after he got the sack from Wolves is absolute nonsense. Ditto Cooper, Russell Martin. If I don't think even we let him win the City if the owners have their say. It's not likely, and I think this is my big concern with all this is, I mean, I think we can pretty much guarantee there's been no succession planning going on here, because we just brought his mate in as director of football. We had the transfer windows just happened, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. But this looks a hasty decision. So I got the horrible feeling the plan is Sheehan, at least for the foreseeable. But yeah, there's not a name that screams out. But then I guess Luke Williams didn't last time, Russell Martin didn't the time before. So I'm sure there'll be interest, because there's only 92 jobs and there's only 23 in the Championship, or 24 in the Championship rather. But so I think there'll be interest, but for now, right now, I don't think you're going to get the sort of caliber of manager we want. So I think, and what I hope the owners appreciate, is that there needs to be a bit of short-termism here. Just focus on now, the next 2 months, getting whatever works to get us over the line, and then have a proper think about who is the longer-term manager. Don't bring some mug in now who will keep us up and give him a 3-year contract and we'll have to sack next October. Well, basically what Cardiff used to do, and still do to a point. Get somebody over the line now. Get us over the line, and then we can get the right manager. Because at the end of the day, getting a good manager in now is going to be the devil's own job, because we look, a pretty decent shout for League One. So I think there needs to be a bit of short-termism now. But who that chap is, I think nobody on that list is screaming out for sure.
No, it does seem like quite a tough one. I mean, we've looked to the lower divisions really in recent years, and for managers that are trying to make their way in the game, and obviously with a philosophy. But if I'm honest, I don't really see anybody lower down really ticking the boxes at the moment. So it's one of those where I really, really don't know who's going to get this job. I think it's more open than probably it's been. I do wonder if we might look abroad. I mean, you look at looking recently, you've seen the likes of Danny Rowe at Sheffield Wednesday. I can't remember the guy Plymouth have just appointed, but obviously they've gone down that route as well. I mean, I could maybe see us doing it, but I suppose the the other person I think who could be in the running, and from my point of view, should be in the running, is Alan Tate. I mean, he's been building up his experience as a number 2 to Steve Cooper. I mean, as far as I'm concerned now, he's probably done about 4 or 5 seasons now as an assistant manager. I mean, I'm not saying he should definitely get the job, because you just don't know how these things can work out, but I certainly think he should be on the shortlist. I mean, do you agree with that?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think when you've been assistant manager for 4 or 5 years, as you say, you know, the next step then is to be a manager. And so I think, you know, I think that's where he's probably going to be looking at some point, unless he's happy to stay as assistant. I think if you look at the short term now, yeah, I mean, does he have more chance of getting a tune out of them than Sheehan does, or getting a reaction from them? Will he get more of a reaction from the crowd, more of support from there? I think as a short-term measure, it's certainly got some merits for sure. I think in terms of longer term, I don't know. To be honest, I think it's one of those. If we went down to League One, I think it would make a hell of a lot of sense. I think, do I see him as a Championship manager? I don't know. I think I could certainly see some merit in the short term, and frankly, I think we should be thinking of the next 2 months rather than worrying about next season just at the moment. So yeah, I wouldn't be against it in the short term for sure, because I think what we really need somebody who can unite the fans, who can unite the squad at the moment. And you know, he's still got some players down here who still remember him. The fans certainly do. So I think, and he'll generate a lot of goodwill. But yeah, I wouldn't be against it on that measure, at least in the short term. Whether it's right long term, I don't know. But I don't think we can even think that far at the moment. I think we just need to think about this season. So I wouldn't be against that for sure.
Yeah, I think the way to look at it now is that, from my point of view, we desperately need a strong character to go in there, because it feels like everybody in there is weak, or certainly the people with any power are weak.
Yeah.
So if he was to go in there, he is a strong character. I could see him wanting to try and change things, and things do need to be changed. And as you say, really, it's from a fan point of view, there would be a lot of goodwill, because obviously he's a club legend and everybody knows where his heart lies. So
yeah,
you know, I certainly think he should be on the shortlist. It would be, you know, that seems an obvious person to strongly consider for the job, I would say, at this moment in time. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll move on now to the transfer window.
Oh, joy, brilliant.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it'll brighten the mood even more, won't it? Obviously, Andy, you came on after the Cardiff game. I think at that point we hadn't signed Hannes Del Cra. I think he came in just after that. But yeah, obviously he came in. Lewis O'Brien came in, but obviously he came in to replace Matt Grimes, which I think him departing was a major shock for everybody, really, wasn't it? So, but a big shock, but also a big loss from my point of view. And I think, you know, obviously a bit of a marmite maybe for some fans, but we've not exactly played well without him so far, have we?
Well, we haven't, and I think a lot of fans wanted to see what Swansea were like without Matt Grimes. I think we have the last 3 games. It's not been particularly pretty. Yeah, I mean, he was Mr. Swansea for the last few years, isn't he? Really, I mean, he's kind of a rare footballer in a way, that he plays every game and he's fit every game. There ain't many you can say that about. And you know, there's times when he's been good. There's been times he's been pretty average, but he's been consistent. He's been consistently 6, 7 out of 10 generally. So I think, yeah, I was shocked he went, but you know, I think if you want to talk about alarm bells, him wanting to go to Coventry, regardless of what else of the reasons for it, I mean that should set the hairs running really, because that would look a sideways move to most people, but at the moment probably looks a bit more than that. It looks a bit vertical. So yeah, no, that was a shocker. I think, you know, so they had to replace him, and so they got Lewis O'Brien, who isn't a replacement, but he's another midfielder, you know, Premier League midfield experience, probably got Premier League wages. I mean, in another time I'd probably raise a flag about that, but we just can't be in a position to be picky at the moment. We had to get somebody in to go there, but I think so we've replaced, you know, a couple of the players who went out in January. So Abbey went out, Grimes went out, we replaced him with Delcroix and O'Brien. But I mean, we said early in the window, didn't we, that we needed bodies in. We were very light. We looked, the spine team just didn't look up to it, and we've not really filled those holes. The weaknesses we had at the start of the window, the weaknesses we had at the end. In fact, I mean, if you look at bodies, we're a lot lighter now than we were in January and on January 1st, remarkably. So yeah, I mean, as a window, it was a shambles. I know we signed this midfielder for next season, which in normal circumstances is a sort of thing good businesses do, good football clubs do, but you do wonder how much of our January budget went on that. And if it had any impact on our ability to bring in players for the season, then it was the wrong thing to do. I don't know if it did. I hope it didn't. But if it did, then it wasn't a smart move. And we still got the problems up front we had. We still lack the number 10 we needed. We still don't really have that many bodies in centre midfield. One or two injuries. We're full backs, if Timon or Key's persona non grata at the moment, we're playing Ron at the right back for reasons I can't begin to comprehend. But yeah, I mean, we still look very light, and if it would only take a couple of injuries, but before things get even worse. And if you're Harry Darwin and you're out of contract in the summer, and you got a bit of a niggle, are you going to be playing? It's and that probably goes for a couple of others, really. Will they be the low knees? Will they be putting their bodies on the line? It's a concern. We look very light, and you only had to see an edifying sight of Coleman scrambling around on the transfer deadline day, trying to get any old player in and being turned down by League One players. It just told a story, and I think we all remember Andy Coleman in the last forum when you body slammed him at the start of it, him saying that we're going to learn our lessons, we won't be in this position again. Well, here we are yet again, and in fact I'd say this is probably our worst one. I think
it's certainly in there, isn't it? I mean, you look at they obviously told us how the system was broken, and then the system's still broken, and they've had time to fix it. So
yeah,
it's baffling, really, in that sense, isn't it? And I mean, we did seem to be scrambling around on deadline day, and I mean, I think there was the Galbraith, wasn't there, for Leyton Orient? That was one that was mentioned, for example. I mean, I think what frustrates me about the stuff like that is, right, when you get right to the end of the window, the only players that are usually available are ones that are out of favour, like at their clubs, or ones that you can bring in on loan who are youngsters. Nobody is going to sell a starting player on deadline day unless you pay way over the odds. Absolutely. And I think it's as if they couldn't grasp that. So understandably, we got turned down on a lot of players. I mean, it's not really rocket science, is it?
It isn't. I think Luke Williams kind of gave the game away in his press conference after it, when he said, Coleman was shocked, regarding our planning 48 hours before the transfer deadline window. Well, A, firstly, why is he shocked? Why isn't he on top of it? But B, why? That basically tells you are planning to do your business on the last day. Why? I mean, I'll always remember when I was on the trust, speaking to Trevor Birch, I think it was in February or March, after the January window, the whole Dan James fiasco happened. He came in and he was just horrified with the way we did business. He said, we leave things to way too late. It's kind of what the owners want to do. But he basically, I knew about Dan James going to Man United 3 months before the window opened. And the moment transfer could be made, he went there. So that deal was done early. Same for McBurney, if I remember correctly. And that, I think that summer we did a lot of business early, because there was a lot of planning done before. Deals were agreed before the window, and then when it came to the window opening, you're just ticking a box at that point. That's just not how we operate now. We deliberately aim to get things done late in the window. It's absolute madness. And as you say, January's never a great time anyway. But especially at the end, you're trying to get players, decent players who their clubs rely on. They've got their own ambitions. Leyton Orient, they floating around the playoffs in League One. They got a real chance of promotion. You're going to try and get their best player now. And the ridiculous thing is, right, we sold them Abdullahi to play in a similar position, and we didn't tie that deal with him. Now, if we were serious about Galbraith, we should have said, okay, yeah, we sell Abdullahi, but we want Galbraith as well. And tied into that, it's just the lack of joined up thinking about it all. Absolutely mad. But the Man City one was the one that really, I think, maybe highlighted where we are as a club now, because we managed to get him down to Fairwood. He saw what was going on. He saw the basic setup. You know, he had a chance to see how everything's working, and he said, "Nah, mate, it's not for me." And he went to Norwich. Now that does rather tell a story, doesn't it? That we aren't where we were, and I think that's a worrying sign of the future.
Yeah, I think it is. And the other thing is, you look back in the past when we were successful and when we were going through the divisions, particularly under Martinez, it did seem as if we were very good at clinching deals for players who maybe have other clubs interested in them. And I mean, in them days, the facilities we had were crap. Let's not dress it up. The training ground was, we were using the Glamorgan Club. Whereas now we have got a state-of-the-art training facility, one of the best in the whole country. And so you've got that before you even start. And that still wasn't enough to tempt this player to sign for us. So it's quite damning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's worrying. But I think, Williams has been getting pelters lately, but I think he's really not been helped by those above him. And, you got to look at Andy Coleman here. I don't think it's just Coleman. I think, Coleman's the face of the ownership. But as we saw with the previous ownership, it's a group of them who will be making these decisions. So I think, Coleman, Cravat, Morris, Cohen, all the others that are there, as well as a couple of others who've been added to the board of directors. It's on all of them. They really need to look at how they've been running this club, and things need to change. They're looking to bring in a director of football, but that's going to be, we've had those before, with Mark Allen, Andy Scott. That's the sort of role they'll be undertaking. But whenever we've had somebody like that, we've had somebody above them on the ground who understands British football. Now, our equivalent at the moment of Trevor Birch during winter is Andy Coleman. Now, he knows a damn sight less than either of them do about anything when it comes to football. And that is the real concern for me, because, what's going to change with Andy Coleman still on the job? He's proven himself not up to the role. And so I just hope the ownership group look at the way things have been going and make that change. Williams is gone. Coleman needs to go, in my eyes.
Oh, he does, yeah. I mean, he's overseen what has been disastrous, really, over the last 18 months to 2 years. And it's obviously, we've been going backwards well before that, but at the same time, it does really feel as if, it's sped up, doesn't it, over the last few transfer windows, in particular, with poor managerial appointments and really poor signings. And I mean, let's be honest, the disconnect now is as bad as probably I can ever remember it between the club and the supporters. I mean, we are seeing the amount of empty seats in most games is really concerning, isn't it? We're now definitely getting lower crowds for some games than we used to get at the Vetch, I would say, particularly in the last season at the Vetch. And that says a lot, doesn't it? We're talking lowest crowds in 20 years. It may say sometimes that midweek, particularly what the crowd is, I don't know, about 12,000, but you're looking around, there's plenty of people staying at home with tickets, aren't they?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, it's visually obvious. When you can see the lettering in the East Stand, then you've got a problem. And you can. In most games, you can see the lettering. And that's been a real change in the last few weeks. I mean, I know we've talked about the disconnect here, and it's been on a slippery slope since 2016, since the first Americans came in. It's not really changing. Now, I've seen a few mentions on social media that Coleman's meeting with fans, off the record, so to speak, having individual chats, etc. But that's not going to help. In fact, it's going to divide, if anything. I mean, the fans forum, now delayed, was a good start, but what's Coleman said since the window? He said absolutely nothing. There's been no comment publicly. What he wasn't saying anything during it. It's silence. He's promised improved communication. It's just not happened. And yeah, I mean, I think it's really noticeable for season tickets. I think the club are trying to do some things. In fairness, I think there's a 0% finance for next season. I think they've kept the early bird option open for longer. So I think they're not blind to it. I think I mean, it all points to season ticket sales being through the floor for next season, which is worrying, really, because financially we are not in a good place now. I think you need to be a bit careful with sort of ticket revenue, because the days of it being the main income for any club in the Championship are gone. TV revenue does trump it these days. It won't when we come to League One, because that ticket revenue would be our main income in those circumstances. So, if we did get relegated, that would be a real cause for concern. But it's really noticeable just how low crowds are getting. I mean, so I did see some wag on social media say that the projected crowd for the fans forum was going to be bigger than our last midweek game. But it's visibly that you can see the crowds are lower, but also the atmosphere of games as well. It's a lot flatter. The crowd hasn't turned yet. Which I'm not sure it's a good or a bad thing. You would have expected a lot more grumbling than there's been. I mean, there's been some, don't get me wrong, but there's been no anger there. It's been almost a quiet acceptance about it all. There's been obviously a bit of moaning, but I remember under Bob Bradley, for example, the stands were shaking with anger. There was both to the manager, to the ownership, etc. It was palpable, but now there just isn't that there, which I think that worries me more than anything, to be honest with you, because I think Swans fans have been quite good in the past at getting angry and sort of using that anger to achieve some good results. At the moment, it just seems apathetic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that is a concern, isn't it? I think a lot of people now just had a bit of a gutsful, haven't they? That's what it feels like to me. It's like a lot of people have walked away. Those that are going, feel a little bit helpless, really, at the whole situation. And this is what happens in the end, isn't it? I mean, there's always anger to start with, but realistically, what can we do? I mean, the days as well of protests and stuff like that. I'm not saying they're not worthwhile, but you can never, because of the way that how much money is in football, you can't really do a lot about it anymore, can you? I mean, like when Tony Petty came in, obviously there was a lot of fan pressure, and it did definitely play a part in him getting ousted. But I mean, the football's a different ballgame these days, isn't it? With all the money involved, and realistically, what can you do?
We've become just another club in the Championship with the way we've been run over the last few years. So I mean, our income is 20 million less than our expenditure. Ballpark. It's probably we won't know about till this season for another 12, 13 months, but it's probably a bit less this season because we've cut things to the bone. So they're probably a bit less, but yeah, the Championship is just awash with clubs who are spending way beyond their means. It's a bit better in the lower leagues, League One, League Two, but I mean, football clubs financially are in a bit of a mess now. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that's not the only way it can be, and I think there was talk about the football having a football regulator coming in who was independent, who could enforce certain things, like clubs having to live beyond their means. And once you do that, then you can stop relying on ownership pumping in 20 million a year just to keep us semi-competitive. But it doesn't look to be happening anytime soon. And from a Swans perspective, I mean, the trust has sold their stake, settled their stake in a way a couple of years ago. So as a club now, as a fan group, what we can do now is a lot more limited to what it has been in the past, for sure. So but I've always believed while financial power might be beyond us, there's a lot of soft power that fans can exert, and which is why I think it's a bit heartbreaking at the moment. We're not united as a fan group. We're not united behind something where we've a group where that can represent our views. I think it's more important now than ever that we have that. But at the moment, we have some fans speaking to Coleman on their own. We don't have a fan group representing us in the way it should be, visibly should be, communicating with us. Yeah, we miss that. And when, as fans, I guess that's probably why we do feel detachment at the moment, because if the ownership isn't speaking to us, if the chairman's not speaking to us, if the trust isn't speaking to us, what can we do? What's going to happen? Why should we feel attachment to it? I mean, I think you tweeted this. It's a hobby. Go to the Swans. I mean, it's more than that, of course it is, but it's supposed to be something that brings enjoyment to us. It's not supposed to be this. And I think the club has lost its way. It's been losing its way for a long time, and it's a worry that it doesn't seem to be getting better, but it really needs to now more than ever.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the problem. Like I say, it is a hobby, but it feels like a chore, and it has done for a long time. I quite often on Saturday look forward to going to the railway about 5 o'clock, having a couple of drinks and watching whatever football's on TV, than actually going to to watch the Swans. And I think that's the damning indictment of it, really. And a lot of people have decided to do other things with their Saturdays. So yeah, it's a concern, isn't it? I mean, but we'll move on now to something that doesn't bring much joy either. But we do have a few games to discuss. We won't go into too much detail before we wrap up, I don't think. But the home game with Coventry, obviously a few days after Grimes had gone, we lost 2-0. I mean, for me, that game was incredibly worrying. We were 2-0 down, obviously, early on at half-time. I had no faith whatsoever we could come back. It looked to me like a broken team. I don't know what you thought.
Well, yeah, that was a game before Brian came in, wasn't it? So that was the first game Grimes wasn't out, and I think probably could have added $1 million to Grimes' transfer fee if they'd seen that beforehand, because we looked even worse without him. Yeah, I mean, it started badly and steadily got worse, didn't it? And I just have no confidence in winning a game if we concede. It's really difficult to see where we're going to get the goals from. I think, and we have been all season capable of taking a lead and occasionally holding it, but if we go behind, there's just no coming back from that, is there? And that was a classic example of it, really. But I think that game probably told the ownership they had no choice but to bring in a midfielder. I'd like to hope it would have happened anyway, but yeah, we just looked so lightweight there, and I think Franco was the one I think that kind of encapsulated for me, because he was trying to do two jobs at once, and he was doing neither particularly well. Jay Fulton was hiding. It was poor, and we just looked completely rudderless. But yeah, that was concerning for sure. Was it our most concerning one? I don't know. There's been so much competition lately, hasn't there? And it was only a 2-goal defeat. But yeah, I mean, I think this has been, we said at the start of the program, can you have much sympathy for Williams, or did it seem inevitable? I think those sort of performances, and it's not just been one, it does bring a level of inevitability to it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the game after that, we had Bristol City, a game we did actually end up winning. How can I put this? It was not a great performance, particularly in the first half, but we did dig in. We managed to nick a goal, and to be fair, we saw it out well. I was quite impressed by the the desire and the commitment that was shown. The quality wasn't great, but I suppose when you're on a bad run, sometimes you have just got to dig in and work really hard, and then try and catch a break, which is, I suppose, is what we did. But it did give us that little bit of a lift. Only for 3 days, sadly, but 3 days nonetheless. Yeah,
I mean, I think that Bristol City one is kind of the one why I was a little surprised about Williams going there today, because the first half we were dead lucky to come in at half-time, 0-0 at half-time. Absolutely, I mean, I think Figueroa made a couple of absolute worldies to keep us in it, and a couple of other saves as well. We were well under the cosh, particularly from set pieces, which had been a bit of a problem for us. And we were lucky to be 0-0. I know Ron had a chance as well, but he's not going to score, is he? So that was 0-0. But I thought second half performance, they dug in defensively, quite resolute. O'Brien looked a much better player than in the first half, and he looked a real acquisition in that second half. Driving forward quite a few times. He set up a lovely chance for which he should have put away. Franco had a shot which Josh Twyman of all people scored a rebound from. I think that second half was a genuinely good second half performance. We rode our luck a little bit at the end. They should have scored. They should have had an equaliser. Debatable penalty decision. I don't think it was, but they had their chances. They could have pinched something. They probably thought they should have done, but I think that was a solid second half performance. It showed a lot of unity of the squad, and I mean, optimistic me, as I often am. I genuinely thought we'd see a bit of a snowball from that. Sheffield Wednesday following up in a couple of days later. That looked an opposition primed to be turned over. They were missing some of their better players. Momentum's everything in football, and hoping we could use that one to build some momentum into that game as well. It wasn't to be, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same, really. It's like, right, well, we've managed to, stop the rot, get a win, get a clean sheet, even though it wasn't brilliant at times. You just felt that would lead to a little bit of an improvement, really, and like I say, a reasonable fixture to come against Sheffield Wednesday, but it didn't work out like that. We only had 4 shots at goal, didn't we, all night, against what was an average team, a team that was probably better than us on the night, but not hugely. Obviously, Harry Darling gives the ball away, and that cost us a goal. But it was just really disappointing, wasn't it, to follow up a good win with a really disappointing performance and result.
It was really disappointing. I'm amazed we had 4 shots. I can remember one, but that's maybe me. I think first half, Sheffield Wednesday had the better chances. They weren't brilliant, but they were the better chances. In the second half, they were the one team trying to win it. I mean, without much quality, but I don't think. I think we were hoping for a 0-0. We could have got a 0-0 if Harry Darling hadn't been Harry Darling and doing what he often does. It would have been 0-0 probably, but he just passed to them. And we've been making these errors week in, week out, for a long time, and we were punished where we probably haven't been punished so often for them. And sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. It was a really bad error, and he knows it was. Can't hang him out to dry for it. But we could have got a draw from that. It's funny, isn't it? We could have got 4 points from last week. Quite plausibly. But yeah, we didn't deserve it. I don't think. I know there's been some. It's always a debate. Did we deserve something? Did we not? I don't know. I'm not sure Sheffield Wednesday deserved to win it either. But if any team did, it was them. I think they were the better of 2 poor sides. But it was as you say, it was really disappointing coming off the back of Bristol City. You're hoping for a reaction. At least be fired up for it. But we just started so slowly. And when you saw the first 5 minutes, you're like, "Oh God, here we go again." It's not changed, and no, it kind of limped out. And once we went 1 down, it just didn't look like we'd scored it. I know Fulton scored with a goal disallowed in the 95th minute, but he looked offside, and it would have been a bit of a robbery in a way at the end.
Yeah, I think it would have been as well, to be honest with you. We certainly didn't look like scoring. But obviously we didn't, even though there was that chance at the end. But I can't say I was too optimistic ahead of the Stoke game at the weekend, partly because our record there is so bad and you could just see what was coming. But at half time, it was a really shocking game, wasn't it? I think they'd had 3 shots, we'd had 1. I've watched paint dry and it's been more enjoyable than that first half.
It's possibly the worst half of football, or the dullest half of football I've seen this season, which it's got a lot of competition, but it was just nothing happened. It was just so low in quality, so scrappy. I know it wasn't the best conditions, but it was just awful. It was properly bad, non-league level bad. It was just low quality. And this happens. You get scrappy halves of football, but it just looked like neither team. Both teams were very low on confidence. Neither team particularly wanted to be out there. They were all both just trying to get to the end of the season, very low on confidence, just hoping to grind something out. So at half time, I think you always hope that the manager can say something, but given our record in the second half of the season, I wasn't overly optimistic, and that's kind of how it went, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. So yeah, we did manage to steal a goal. I mean, it was a very scrappy one, wasn't it? I mean, at that point, we're hoping that we can manage to, just grind out the win, like a bit like what we did at Bristol City with Josh Tymon scoring again as he did at Ashton Gate.
Yeah.
But then we've, two bad set piece goals have been conceded. And then what was a wonder goal really at the end, although it probably didn't have much of an impact on the game other than adding to our misery. But really disappointing to concede 3 goals to a crap side like that, isn't it?
They hadn't scored since December at all. But we rode into town and sorted that for them. I think the thing that got me was it was 3 minutes, was it, between us scoring and them equalising, which is just us all over, isn't it? Same happened in Norwich. I think it was even quicker that time. But yeah, the set piece ones, and it was basics. I can't remember who lost their man for the first one, but the second one, O'Brien just looked at him running past and then said, "Oh, better go and get him then." But is that the way they just set up to defend? I don't know. But it was so easy, and we're very much a soft touch from set pieces. We've actually got a bit of a threat from an attacking sense occasionally, especially with Harry Darwin. But yeah, I mean, we're just such a soft touch with them, which is probably what worries me more than anything. If we can't score goals, fine, but we got to try and keep clean sheets, and we just look such a soft touch, especially from set pieces, which is worrying. As you say, Stoke were nothing. They were awful. I mean, I think they're on pretty much the same points we are, aren't they? So you got if they are getting the better of you. And I think they did in that second half. But more than that, I think they were the team that wanted to win that game. They opened things up in the second half. Before our goal, they were the ones attacking more. I'm not sure they had more quality than us, but they were genuinely the ones going for it. I think maybe that's the one thing that does give me a bit of optimism, that if somebody can instill that in our players, regardless of the lack of quality, maybe we can turn things around a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's really depressing stuff, isn't it? And I think what's worrying now is that we played Stoke, we played Sheffield Wednesday. The next few games are, teams who are slightly better than them, not much better than them, but are better than them. And if we're getting turned over by Stoke, then, and as you say, once they went 2-1 up, there's only one winner. Then are we going to fare any better than the other ones? It's really hard to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what worries me. I mean, just again, you feel like we've had a lot of games recently against teams where I think realistically we could be picking up points, and we really haven't done so, have we? And I mean, now we're going to start to come into a tougher run of games coming up. I mean, we're going to have Burnley and Leeds in March, for example, and given our record against the teams at the top the last couple of years, you can forget it. It just feels like we have no hope of results in those games. And now the weekend itself will be tough, won't it, as well? We've got Blackburn. Obviously, they've had a little bit of turmoil in terms of John Eustace, the manager, has left for Derby. But I mean, they're going well, aren't they, towards the top of the division, looking at pushing the playoffs. And yeah, that's going to be a tricky game for us, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, Blackburn at home, Preston away, Middlesbrough at home, Watford away. The games, normal service, we should aim to get something from them. But I think, I mean, if we concede, it's really hard to see. I mean, all of those have got, I think, Watford aside, I don't think they're going to be challenging the playoffs, are they? But Preston as well. I think those are the away games. I think Blackburn have their ambitions, Middlesbrough have their ambitions. They'll come here trying to win, and they've probably got a bit more quality than we have at the moment. Certainly playing with a bit more confidence. But these games are winnable. Well, at least getting something out of them if the players got the right attitude to set up correctly. Even regardless of the lack of quality. So hopefully Sheehan or whoever's in charge can just squeeze something out of them. And maybe we just get a bit lucky. I remember, was it under Martin? I think it was. We played Blackburn at home on a Saturday. They absolutely battered us, but we won 1-0. We had a brilliant defensive effort. So yeah, we need something like that, really, just to backs to the wall, play 6 in the back or something, and just to try and grind something out. Because I think it's going to be a grind from here on out. We need to get 3 or 4 wins. I don't think it's going to take much more than that. Teams at the bottom don't tend to win games. We've got a healthy buffer, but we could really do with a win or 2 now, just to settle the nerves. And actually, thinking longer term, the quicker we can get out of the hole we're in, the more time we have to actually plan properly for what happens next. Because in the summer, there really needs to be a proper review on this absolute mess of the season, and actually understand what has worked, what really hasn't, and then what the hell we're going to do about it. But yeah, short term, next 4 games, try and get something out of it, and fingers crossed we do. But not a lot of optimism, if I'm being honest.
No, I feel the same as you, and I'm trying to look at it as in, we've got this game on Saturday, and then the weekend after we don't have a game, so the Swans can't bring my mood down on the weekend. And I have to say, I'm quite looking forward to that. And when someone like me says that they're looking forward to the fact we're not playing, they should be concerned, because usually I do look forward to it a lot. But I suspect I might not be the only person with that mindset, unfortunately. And so we only have 1 more game now, don't we, before the fans forum? So that'll be interesting. So that's been rearranged now for Monday, the 3rd of March. So make a note of it if you're intended to go. But I think we'll wrap it up here. We've I don't think I could take much more of this. So Andy, thank you very much for once again accepting the hospital pass gratefully. We may do a podcast next week, or we might wait until the week after when we've got the fans forum and the Preston game, which is on the Tuesday. But watch this space. But thanks for joining us. If we brought your mood down, I apologise. Hopefully you've we've got all this now out in the open. It will have been a little bit of therapy for everybody, and they can move on and think about the rest of their week, and hopefully think about something other than the Swans until the weekend. But as ever, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back soon. So bye for now.